All right, so I spend a lot of time thinking about this particular topic, and it's the corporate wars. I wrote up a script and then I inserted it into ChatGPT, and it made me start thinking of how we've already, or have been since this country started, have been fighting the corporate wars. Because America isn't a country, it's a corporation with its own standing army and its own ability to inflict its behavior, its thoughts, its feelings on other places that don't want it, frankly. You you export the way you want people to think, and to me that feels very corporate. I don't know if that's just the way that I think. Maybe I'm insane for thinking that way, but many people feel that corporations have too much power, especially America Corporation, because its influence shouldn't be as widespread as it currently is. With that said, let's get into our monologue. Every single day we wake up and march into battle, not with weapons, but with time clocks and paychecks that barely cover rent. Corporations have convinced us that working harder is the only way to survive. But the truth is, we're not employees. We're soldiers fighting in wars we never signed up for. The battlefield isn't in some foreign country, it's in a warehouse, office cubicles, and grocery store aisles, where people are crushed under impossible demands while the CEOs hoard all of the wealth. And the worst part, most of us don't even realize we've been drafted. How did you like that? I didn't like that. I tuckered up my rear end. Uh, did I say pucker up or tuckered up? I meant puckered up my rear end. That was a hell of an opening monologue. Thanks, ChatGPT. You're the best. I never even thought about outlining this particular video this way. And I don't read these things until I'm actually recording, just so that I am just as surprised as you are. And that was pretty harsh because it does feel like every morning that you have to get up at 8 o'clock, like you don't really have a choice. And that pain in the pit of your stomach is not just that cockroach that went flying into my ramen first thing this morning. It was more than that. It was being forced to live here. This is all I can afford. I don't want to live in this neighborhood. I don't want to live in this apartment. I don't want my current job. And well, everything about this weekend is absolutely miserable. All right, let's get into talking point number one. And let me warn you guys, these talking points are a little spicy. Corporations treat workers like disposable soldiers. Layoffs are the corporate version of casualties, but instead of a battlefield, it's an Excel spreadsheet deciding who survives. That is one of the truest things I have said on this channel. Layoffs are casualties. All those federal workers that have lost their jobs have become casualties of this administration. No one wants to see it that way, but a lot of them are struggling to get unemployment benefits, even if they were to get unemployment benefits. Here in Arizona, the unemployment benefit is $200 a week. Average rent price for a single apartment is $2,000 a month. How long are you going to survive on $200 a week? Not very long. And with so many people living paycheck to paycheck, and they're making it nearly impossible to collect unemployment. If you want to try to get unemployment benefits, you better be prepared to wait. Like, for instance, that person that I talk to you guys about all the time that lost her job at the sales place, it took her 3 months before she got a thin dime out of the unemployment office. They paid her back the money that she would have gotten over waiting that period of time. But still, she didn't see a thin red cent for months. And when you call these places, you better be prepared to be on the phone for up to 8 hours. Because the number one thing that department wants to do is not pay people. They want to make it so hard to get unemployment benefits that you'll give up trying. The problem is desperation. Getting a job in today's economy is very hard, and becoming a casualty after getting that job, especially in what I've seen in the last 3 months at my current Able Corp. People who worked for decades in the company suddenly one day walk in, they don't work here anymore. My favorite part is where they include the message, we'll pay out leftover vacation time. And I was just like, isn't that cruel? Isn't that just despicable to come in and realize that you've been taken out at the knees just because you were in the wrong cell on an Excel spreadsheet? And that's just the way it is. The people who survive just keep marching through the mud until it's your turn. And you become one of the casualties as they decide that your job is no longer necessary, or even worse, when you're being laid off because you're being paid too much money. A lot of these jobs, and it's something that I've heard very recently, is that corporations are trying to get rid of older workers and replace them with entry level workers, even if they have to add 2 or 3 entry level workers, because they will burn out these workers. And then they'll get new entry level workers. America's become a place of entry level. They don't want senior level workers. They don't want people who need things like benefits. They want desperation at a discount. And that's what they're getting. And I would never get comfortable in a job. It's kind of the reason why I've never tried to establish a better life, because you never know when it's going to end. We all have a work expiration date. This isn't America from the 1980s. No one you know is going to be working at the same place for more than a few years. The number one reason for that is they simply can't afford to stay. Talking point number 2. Companies like Amazon and Tesla are building private security teams, the early stages of corporate militias or corporate mercenaries. If corporations get too powerful, they won't need government armies. They'll have their own. This is something that I've noticed in the past 5 to 10 years, is that the corporate wars seem to have started a long time ago. They're just making it more obvious. Once you start training your own workers, it's to fight. It means that you're preparing. And I thought it was silly to think about it this way, because when I started working at Walmart, one of the first things you find out is that they take out a life insurance policy on you. And that freaked me out when I saw that. I was like, why would the corporation do that? Well, you're now part of the corporation. So they're going to benefit if anything happens to you. Either way. And I thought it was so eerie that a corporation would do that, but it makes perfect sense when you think about it. You're an asset. You're not an employee. You're not a human being. You're a number. When you start working at any place, you get an employee number, which might as well be written on your uniform saying, so and so, designation 0001, you're disposable right from the get go. And that feels to me very unpleasant. It feels dirty in a sense to think of workers as being that disposable. Talking point number 3. War for oil, resources, and global influence have always been about profit, not patriotism. We all know that. Every conflict in America has been about something we don't care about. I mean, that's why so many people try to avoid the draft during Vietnam, is because nobody honestly believes in any of these causes. The military has a tendency to hire in low income communities. The poorer your area is, chances are the recruiters, the army recruiters, will be there, because if you're working in a town and there's nothing there, the military will give you a job. And recruiting for them gets harder and harder every year because more people don't want that job. It's not considered a good job, at least in the bottom parts of it. I'm not saying that it wouldn't be a cushy job if you were, I don't know, a general or something, where you just tell people what to do. You just point out a map and just say you're going over there, and who cares how many of you come back? But it's just the way that it's turned out. It's like patriotism to me doesn't make any sense, because once you come back from fighting, it's not like you get to live a cushy life. There's no such thing as a soldier that comes back like they were before they left. I did an entire degree on human conflict. And the number one thing I learned is that once you engage in any type of fighting, it changes you, it changes your mind, it changes everything about you. And you don't have to actually see combat. It's just the way that you're trained to act in an environment where you're going to be under constant stress. It changes people. And you can't go back to the version of you that you were before you left. My neighbor who was in the National Guard, the last time I saw him at the gym after he'd been in active duty overseas and he was just coming back for some leave, like the look on his face was really, really strange. Like he didn't even look human anymore. He'd lost, I'm gonna say, 30 to 40 pounds worth of muscle because he couldn't go to the gym every day like he did here. Part of his day was just spending it at the gym. He was a monster of a man. I'd say he's 6 feet 3 inches tall, 250 pounds of solid muscle. The guy that I saw at the gym was scrawny. And I was just like, wow, it's either the food, the lack of training, or stress, because I think he works in artillery. So they told me that every time they fire off one of those guns, that the explosion just rattles through your body. I was just like, wow, that can't be good for you. And he'd been in for about 10 years. And you could just tell, just talking to him, it's just different. It's just, there's something strange about military service that causes people to change in ways that you just don't understand. I've talked to a lot of uh, Vietnam veterans, and most of them don't want to talk. They don't want to relive the memories that they have from being over there. All right, let's go on to talking point number 4. If you can't quit your job without losing everything, are you really free? Workers are pressured to show loyalty, but companies treat them as disposable. Every time you clock in, you're helping a CEO's bottom line. But will they fight for you when you're struggling? No, they won't. In fact, the wages are an obvious way of showing people how you feel about them. When you pay people nothing, you're you're paid nothing because you're worth nothing. And if you're working a McDonald's style job, which all of us are, right? We come into work, put the fries in the bag, little bro. At the end of the day, we go home. But it's not enough money. The CEO knows it's not enough money. And their exploitation of regular people, it, it's despicable, but it's understandable. Because in their own minds, the only thing that matters to people that have a lot of money is making more money. It doesn't matter if they have to destroy your entire way, your entire happiness, right? Because if you've been working for a while, you'll understand one thing: The fastest way to destroy a person's mental health is by giving them a job. And that gets amplified when you give that person a job that isn't sufficient money in order to survive. And those people, those executive people, know exactly what they're doing to people, not even trying to sugarcoat it even a tiny bit, because they're the people who are also raising the prices. The same people that employ you to do a job are the very same people that know that you can't live on what they're paying you because they've raised the prices. They've priced out most of us out of nearly everything: leisure, housing, food. What do we have left? I mean, to honestly believe that you're free, it's unrealistic because you have to work. And as a person that doesn't want to work myself, I have never woken up a single day in my entire life and thought, you know what, it's great to go to work. No. Work usually doesn't like me. I don't like work. It's an abusive relationship that you have with your job. Most all of us proletariat members have an abusive relationship with our jobs. We don't like what we do. What we do is often boring and repetitive. And no matter whether or not you're doing a good job or a bad job, your employer is going to make you seem like you're incompetent. It's what they all do. I'm not certain why that's been or why that's been my experience. If you guys have had a different experience, put it down in the comments section. Because regardless of where I've worked throughout my entire life, making you feel stupid, making you anxious, provoking the idea that you're completely disposable every day, telling you to quit because they don't want to fire you, because they don't want to have to pay you unemployment benefits, but every day making certain that that day is the worst day of your entire life. That's been my experience with every corporation I've had to work for. From the very bottom in retail all the way up to my current job, every day has been a miserable day at work. When you're sitting there at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and your brain's melting out of your ears because you're just bored out of your mind, you've been burnt out for years, and the idea of finding a better job, well, it evaporated a long time ago. There's no way that I could manipulate my resume in any conceivable way that will get me a job that will pay me more money. In fact, any job that I take right now is going to pay significantly less. I'm going to take a 25 to 35% loss in money. And that means that I'm going to have to work even harder. Because if you're down there at the $20 range of earnings per hour, it's not enough. You know it. I say it on this channel nearly every day. It's not enough because it was never intended to be enough. The minimum wage was never supposed to support life. Maybe in the 80s, but since then, no. It's never kept up with the cost of everything. And the strange part to me is that you have tens of millions of people that don't make enough money to live off. And instead of trying to lift them up to help them thrive, you make money by making certain that they don't thrive, that they're in survival mode all of the time, and that their only reason for coming back to work the next day is fear of being even in a worse spot. And that means moving into your car while you're working full time, or just living on the street because you can't afford a car. Could you imagine that? You're working one or two or even more jobs, but because of the high cost of living, you can't afford to live indoors. And tragically, that's the reality for not a couple hundred or a couple thousand. Millions of people right now are experiencing soft homelessness. the fact that they get to stay somewhere, but you don't have a key. That's the biggest difference between soft homelessness and homelessness, is that you're staying on someone's couch, you're sleeping in the back of someone's van, you're sleeping somewhere where someone's letting you stay just so that you can keep yourself out of the rain. But that's it. That to me is the bare bones of survival that this current world we live in wants to push more of us into. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I will catch you guys later. So, this is a future video, so you guys know. I recorded this at some point during the weekend. I always feel odd when I do that, when I post something and then you guys don't get to see it for 4 or 5 days, because my mood changes from minute to minute when I'm making videos. So when I watch this, I'm not going to be in the same mood.